So I've got all my usual gear up top that you saw in the last camping video, but this time I also remembered my solar boombox, which the other day when I was twisted out of my mind on some goodies, I actually put this thing into my backpack so I wouldn't forget it and leave it somewhere. But I forgot later that I had put a boombox into my backpack, so I didn't know why music was coming out of the bag. But instead of getting distressed about it, I just rolled with it and accepted that now my backpack made music, and I was like, fuck yeah, music backpack, music backpack, music backpack, music backpack, music backpack. Sound comes out of it. It's so obvious. Sound comes out of it because it's the music backpack. Checkmate, atheists. This is the shower. It's got a sort of hypercolor, a non-electronic thermometer here where it illuminates, or rather the temperatures that you're closest to become visible as the ambient temperature reaches that point, or I suppose the temperature of the water inside. So it doesn't tell you precisely what the temperature is, but it's right now closest to 104, and it's 110 is starting to appear, and 88 degrees is up here, and it's starting to disappear. So it's somewhere in the vicinity of 104, and it works pretty well. You have to know that you have to turn it around to use it, because it's sort of greenhouse effect dependent. It has a transparent side for the sun to come in through, and then it has a black background to absorb that heat and sort of trap it near the water. It's got a little valve down here. It's just gravity fed, and it's quite warm. It's discernibly much warmer than body temperature. It doesn't get as hot as the shower in your house does, but it's plenty comfortable for washing your hair. It should be obvious what this is. No, I'm actually not going to lift the lid because it's just terrible in there. I looked inside earlier and I cried. Are you man enough to cry tender tears of sorrow and regret at your own poop? Anyway, I have to pack that out. I'm not looking forward to driving with that in the same car as me. Here's a sick-ass little stream where all kinds of cute tiny frogs hang out. It empties into this freshwater reservoir. It's a pond coated all across the surface by what libtard scientists want you to believe is duckweed, air quotes, but based and red-pilled kings will know is Shrek cum, the essential ingredient in virility potions. Many people don't know the hidden truth of Shreks as a species. They're very similar to squanches in that respect. Like when they're gooning and they've got to go free blast their goon juice somewhere, they usually just shoot it into a body of water, which it saturates the body of water, impregnates nature itself, and then little baby Shreks crawl out of the water onto land a couple of months later. Nature is healing. Yep. It's just like the almanac said. The Shrek cum is really thick this year. It's got a soupy consistency. Can't wait to dip my balls in it. I hope my body can take it. There are frogs here. They're just masters of disguise. Nature's perfect little ninjas. They're super cute. They're about the size of the tip of your finger. And, well, I don't know, most people's fingers. Maybe you have weird little baby hands. They're brown, so they just blend into the mud perfectly. A most ingenious survival strategy. I've been trying to get footage of them, but every time you get too close to them, they hop away. What you gotta do is sing a song to entice them out of hiding. Tiny frogs are taking care of business every day. Life has been hard since Alex Jones turned them gay. But tiny frogs are doing it hard, they're doing it right. Tiny frogs are the only thing that gets me through the night. Tiny fucking frogs, yeah. They are so cute. They're gonna hop right into your heart and then cause serious health complications because your body is sensitive to foreign bodies. It will require multiple invasive and expensive surgeries to have them removed ultimately. Don't let them inside of you. Shh. There's one of them now. Don't run away from me. Don't run away from me. Ignore me. Let me love you! Get a load of this. Get a load of how pretty this is. This is the aftermarket airport shuttle bus that my buddy is converting into a live-aboard van dweller build. We'll do a brief tour of that later, but get a load of this natural beauty. Look at these rolling green hills. This is what old people think the past looked like, the kind of people who mistake Thomas Kincaid paintings for photographs. Even though it's that pretty though, I don't hesitate to piss all over it. One of the most liberating things about being out here is just being able to drop trout and free blast piss wherever you want, like a racehorse. You can't really do that just anywhere. It's really just outdoors when you're camping, at a music festival, or indoors at a Nickelback concert, because there's no way that pissing on anything there is going to make it any worse. You like that? That was just a little high concept Nickelback humor. It's a little ahead of its time, but you're going to be seeing it everywhere by about 2005. This is, of course, a mass grave from the aftermath of the human tree war. You may have seen our war machines disguised as bulldozers, quote unquote, clearing land, but really it's acts of retribution for all of the lives that were lost in that famous historical battle. And these are Shrek fleshlights. You can get some idea of the length and girth of the Shrek unit from looking at these, but also the fact that some of them are fractured because the sheer force and magnitude of their emissions sometimes causes the end to just fucking explode. It's right here because he likes to look at death while he's doing it. It helps him achieve climax. And if it can do this to a concrete fleshlight, you can just imagine what it would do to a human body in lurid detail in bed at night. Sometimes I imagine that 7 or 8 times a day, sometimes looking directly into the eyes of other people who assume I'm contemplating, I don't know, taxes or marginal returns or something. This is a rare treat. This is an airplane bone. If you look inside of any living specimen of airplanes, they have a skeleton that's made out of these. And as they grow old and die while in mid-flight, these bones fall from the sky and are harvested to be turned into buildings, iPads, you name it, really. So that's what I assumed was the outhouse until like day 3. I've got some cleaning up to do in there. This is the Schwamp. It's actually not that damp on the ground in there because it's summer, so it's mostly dried up, but it's really lush because that used to be immersed in water. It's nicely framed by this little archway. Looks like something straight out of an RPG because of my poisoned internet and gaming addled brain. It's so cozy in there. It is the most lush meadow to lay down on. And look at trees, which is most of what I came up here to do. And it sounds dull, but it's actually very fascinating. You learn a lot. Like, for example, did you know libtarded scientists don't want you to know that trees are just constantly screaming inwardly? We can't hear it, but we feel it as wind. That's where wind comes from. Stuff like that is why I want to be a father someday, because I want to pass on this wisdom to my child. Just teach them facts about nature, but intentionally teach them wrongly. Because I don't want him to know a lot about reality. I don't want him to know what's real, because most of that is disappointing and scary. Wake up, sheeple! You don't have to just be sheep. Well, I guess you do. They like it when I sing to them. I think. I can't interpret their expressions too well. They're backing up as a show of respect, because approaching them like that's a power move. Whoa! Butts and nuts are all I know. My PhD is just for show. I got it at a shopping mall from the same night school as Steven Seagal. They're not clapping because they're not Americans, but that one's into it. I can see it in his eyes. The cold, dead eyes of a killer. They're so cute. I don't think I could farm sheep because I couldn't bring myself to slaughter them, I don't think. I guess that's kind of, I mean, I guess it depends how you look at it, because in a manner of speaking, livestock don't die, they just become food. And then they continue to be a part of you for about 2 hours. And do try to be careful. Some of these fences are electric. And they say not to pee on these, and they're right. But if you just touch the tip of your pee-pee to the wire, before you pass out, you glimpse the face of God. Spoiler alert, it's just Freddie Mercury with more mustaches. I don't remember how many he had originally while he was alive, but it's more of them. They're just everywhere. They're all over his body. It's glorious. And basically what the Bible describes. There's more of the electrified cable, also known as the forbidden jump rope. Dare I avail myself of it? But at what cost? This is one of those trees that I came here to look at. It's all thick and gnarled and veiny. Another one of those forbidden nature facts that libtard scientists don't want you to know about is this is basically what my pee-pee looks like. Like, everybody's so curious about what Count Dankula's pee-pee looks like. I like to be included in things too, guys. Just in case you were wondering, this is basically how it looks. I mean, close up. On a good day though, just to manage your expectations, this is what it looks like when I bring my A game. I don't always bring my A game, but when I do, she pays for my Uber. So this artifact is just an example of some of the technology that the sheep have been working on. They've been advancing and developing at a slow pace, and they're at the early stages. They have not industrialized. They're basically just building individual walls. They haven't yet worked out that you need multiple walls for a structure, and it's kind of shitty. There's a lot of gaps in it because they're just a little bit stupid. I think their space program is probably pretty far out, generously, but god damn it, they're out here trying their best. I mean, come on, have you built a wall? Yeah, I didn't think so. Neither have I, but that's because I don't build walls, I build bridges. This looks like it would be for water, but no, this is actually raw liquid sewage. One of the sheep accidentally got stuck in here and just sucked into it, just compressed into that tube, and it was like that scene from Willy Wonka where the fat kid falls into the chocolate river and then gets wedged up that tube. I have never been harder. So beautiful, yet so fragile. It's pristine wilderness. It's a shame all of this will have to be torn down soon so that POG factories can be built here, as the arc of history continues its trajectory towards its necessary outcome, which is of course the turning of all human industrial efforts towards the manufacturing of POGs. Well, remanufacturing, they can only recycle so many because a lot of those had like art on them that was topical in the 90s. There's ones that are like based on the OJ trial and would probably not sell as well in the modern era. Modern collectors demand POGs with currently relevant art on them that speaks to their interests and lifestyle. Yeah, if you can't tell, not to humble brag, but I'm an early investor in the revival of POGs. I expect them to be the currency of the future. It's what comes after Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. I got snookered into that whole altcoin cryptocurrency scene. I made a text document on my desktop. I copied and pasted about $1,000 signs into it. Then I made about 100 copies of that text document and put that in a zip file. And I made about 100 copies of that zip file, put it in a RAR file, put 100 of those into a .7z file. And then somebody told me that's not what cryptocurrency is, actually. But I have big hopes for the POG thing. I expect to be rewarded handsomely for my visionary investment in that endeavor. This is a nice, cozy, closed-in area on the other side of this fence. This little pocket back here that has good privacy. This is where I had the toilet before, until it became inconvenient to run out to it every night to drop a salty, steamy dump. Because you can piss anywhere, but you can't just let your dumps fly everywhere. You got to be conservative and responsible with your dumps. But yeah, this is very calming and contemplative. It's a good place to sit on the pot, look at the beautiful scenery, and contemplate the truly big, meaningful questions of life. Like what kinds of Pokemon there could be in the future that haven't been invented yet, even. Like Stapler, or Staplor with an O. That could be one. That's just an idea that probably Game Freak hasn't even had yet. Staplor. But you can have that for free. This is actually a farm. I don't know if I mentioned, it should have been clear from the sheep. Which got me thinking about how popular culture views farmers as an object of ridicule. The stereotype of the country bumpkin primitive farmer. They're anything but. People don't realize, number one, you should value the people who make the food that you eat. That is a noble profession. Everybody needs food. And number two, farms in the US at least have some of the highest technology in the country. They are on the leading edge of automation. And I don't mean indoor automation in a controlled environment. I mean the really hardcore advanced robots that can navigate challenging, unpredictable outdoor terrain and do computer vision to optically recognize like strawberries and how to cut the stem to pick them and shit like that. It's actually really high tech. And that's the big farms. It's trickling down to medium-sized farms too, but in those situations, the farmer isn't out there manually doing a lot of stuff. He mostly, pulls levers from inside an air-conditioned space, controlling robots. There's still manual stuff that gets done, but it's really far and away more advanced than most people realize. And I feel like if we got that information out there, people would view the farming profession differently than they currently do, which is sort of unfortunate. I should do a fireside chat about that topic. So yeah, no, farmers are not ridiculous figures. They are captains of industry. They are on the leading edge of agricultural automation and automation in general. We should admire them and look at them for a roadmap for how to implement outdoor robots elsewhere in society. What's ridiculous is me, because as I'm having these thoughts about the beauty of nature and simplifying my life and whittling down my technological dependence, my first person perspective is of these LED illuminated fans in my face, in the corners of my vision, through these shades, looking down at my GoPro and looking like 21st century spaceman. So even if you look at this stuff and think, hey, he looks kind of funny, but that looks legit useful, so it's borderline. He's right on the edge there. Maybe that's a cool guy. Don't be fooled. I'm laughing at myself inside. I remember I promised you guys a interior tour of the shuttle bus. His plan is to have a motorcycle or a dirt bike or electric bike or something that he can take up inside the vehicle and lock securely, which is why he got the airport shuttle bus, because it's got the wheelchair ramp that comes down, so he can just drive it in and stash it in the open floor space while it's not being used. It's got those nice big windows to let a lot of natural light in. It's got great visibility in the front. It's really unfinished inside. Manage your expectations and judge this as a work in progress. All the insulation had to be ripped out and, as you can see, replaced with fresh new insulation because the old insulation was old and moldy. Some of that still has to be done at the edges. It has been extensively refurbished. There were micro fissures in the rubber roof before he did a lot of patching and replacement. This is the main area. He's going to have at least like 5 or 6 square feet of open floor space for VR. He wants VR and a projector for gaming. He wants a projector so he can roll up the screen and have it unobtrusive and out of the way, because it's going to be back there and ideally not covering the window all the time. The bed is back here for now. He finally committed to a permanent feature of the interior, which is this bed that's built in. He's going to cut out the middle section and have that come apart into two pieces that can then be propped up with the cushions and turn this into seating. You got your standard piss jug, your antibacterial hand soap. I swear to God, I thought that was lube. Unbelievably, it's not. It's sunscreen, although I guess that can be lube if you're an adventurous person and are not too cautious about what goes into your body. A sexual pioneer, you might say. This is the shitter, by the way, and it's still as yet undetermined where that's going to be stashed. It's just going to be a composting toilet if you open that up. He's got plans to, there's actually an outlet for the coolant loop over there that he can use to tie in a water system so that heat from the engine will be used. The heat that gets carried away from the engine through the coolant loop will then also help to heat water for showers. He wants an indoor shower. It's not going to be a fully enclosed compartment. It's going to be a floor pan with a high, like ankle height baffle at the bottom to keep the water in and to tuck the inside of the shower curtain into, so that opens up into additional space, which I don't really think will be usable for anything, but he'll have hot showers in here. We've been talking about committing to permanent features in order to make the most optimal use of space. It's difficult to do just committing to something like that. Because you sacrifice the potential. You sacrifice the modularity of being able to rearrange everything and have it be whatever you want, making something permanent. But you have to do that in order to reap the benefits of committing to a permanent feature like that, which I imagine is also how marriage works. But, what the fuck do I know about that? You got storage space under here for, dry foods, water, bodies, you name it. He's got plans for efficient usage of this thing as a structural feature when it's closed and folded up like this. He wants a countertop with hooks that hook into this and hang on the mesh, so that when that's down, it's not a countertop, but when it's up, it can be a countertop with a little sink run off a 12-volt water pump that it can unscrew from the gray water tank and the unplug from the electrical system when he wants to detach it. Stuff like that is just really optimal use of space. It's super interesting to me because it shares a lot of elements with underwater habitat design or space habitat design. Just learning what you need, what you absolutely need as a permanent feature of a structure, and what can be removable and reconfigurable for the sake of making more efficient use of limited floor space and ergonomics and livability. I talked with him about solar and batteries. He doesn't want to do that yet. He's going to rely mostly on gas for now. I think I might have talked him into having electric appliances without the panels or batteries that just plug into shore power while he's stationary, so that he's not using gas all the time. But gas is so cheap up here that's a hard sell, although so are electric appliances on Amazon. So we'll see where that goes. It ultimately could be a nomad type vehicle with all the off-grid stuff. He just doesn't need it to be that way right now because he's got a 5-year contract working on this farm, which is what's paying for the process of assembling this bus, buying the parts and the tools and whatnot, which is a pretty sweet gig. Work here for 5 years, live in the bus as you build it, and then by the end of it, you have a completed vehicle. All right, hold your horses, you tender, beautiful babies. I know what you want to see. You knew what was coming, didn't you? The flying squadron is back, and he's on the attack. He's seen your butt crack, and it looks like a snack. He made you an OnlyFans, where K-pop stans can see your scrotum and glands being touched by rough, manly hands. Candiru. Candiru, also known as canero, toothpick fish, or vampire fish, is a species of parasitic freshwater catfish native to the Amazon basin, where it is found in the countries of Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru. The definition of candiru differs between authors. The word has been used to refer only to Vandalia serosa, the entire genus Vandalia, the subfamily unpronounceable science word, or even the two subfamilies unpronounceable science words 2 and 3. Although some candiru species have been known to grow to a size of 40 centimeters, or 16 inches in length, others are considerably smaller. These smaller species are known for an alleged tendency to invade and parasitize the human urethra. However, despite ethnological reports dating back to the late 19th century, the first documented case of the removal of a candiru from a human urethra did not occur until 1997, And even that incident has remained a matter of controversy. So, why is the deep, titillating, sonorous sound of Hamdad describing the pee-pee hole fish to you? The literal meme fish. Because it is one of my favorite examples of nature being unnecessarily cruel. Probably most of you have positive feelings about nature, and being that it's the human tendency to try to categorize everything into entirely good or bad categories, I feel that categorizing nature as good is not only simplistic, but sort of misses some of its awesome and terrible majesty. Because nature is both wonderful and terrible. It is a beautiful horror, a juxtaposition of feelings typically found only in religious literature. It is apt here, though, I feel. It's a psycho bitch, nature, which is beautiful and draws you in with that beauty, but then stabs you. It will kiss you and it will kill you. Nature brought us such favorites as kittens, puppies, ferrets, hamsters, and the all-time favorite of everybody everywhere, baby ducklings. And yet, those ducklings will grow one day into adult mallards and engage in the collective rape of targeted females using their horrific 11-inch long corkscrew penises. Are they orange? I was too frightened to find out. I stopped Googling and looked away from the screen. How is this possible? How can the same nature give us fluffy, yellow, adorable baby ducklings and also collective corkscrew penis horror rape? How do you get kittens, a basket full of beautiful baby kittens, and Ebola from the same source? A conundrum which has long vexed theologian and philosopher alike. How do you square that circle? How do you reconcile those two seemingly contradictory properties, in particular if one believes in a benign creator who wants us to be happy? After all, if reality is artificial, engineered to be the way that it is, then Ebola is intentional. All the children who die from it each year in the developing world, that's an intended outcome. How does that make sense if we are created beings in a world designed to have us in it and the creator wants us to be happy? Now, from a biblical standpoint, that's all a consequence of the fall from grace, which happened when Adam and Eve first sinned against Yahweh in the Garden of Eden. Whereupon all of creation, formerly an idyllic garden of wholesome, welcoming delights, was turned against us, made unwelcoming, hostile, and dangerous to humans. This is supposedly when meat eating began. There was no predation before this point. The lion lay peaceably with the lamb, their enormous and fearsome teeth originally intended for carving plants apart, I guess. Basically, an elaborate and theatrical way of saying that everything that's wrong with the world is the fault of people who disobey the church. Whenever they say God, mentally substitute the church. Whenever they say the Word of God, mentally substitute church teachings. Functionally, that's what they mean. It's our fault that God had to send Ebola against children. He beats us because he loves us, but we deserve it because we don't listen. The reality is almost worse than that, which is simply that Ebola and the Candiru fish and all these other nasties of nature are the way that they are because the alternative was the howling abyss of death. Everything you see in nature is shaped by death. Perhaps you have admired bird song or the sound of frogs croaking or crickets chirping. They're screaming, trying to reproduce as quickly as possible because they know, they have relatively certain foreknowledge that at some point they will be torn apart and eaten while they're still alive. That is the almost certain fate of every living thing on the planet that isn't humans or our pets. Or cattle, I suppose, but only because we kill them before we eat them. With the biblical stuff covered already, the scientific explanation of how things came to be this way is so crazy on its own, I frankly don't blame a lot of people for thinking that it sounds made up. Basically, you do not need a complete animal cell for life to get started, contrary to what you may have heard from the likes of Ken Ham or Kent Hovind. Life can be much simpler than that, and in fact was. There are many steps on the way to modern cells, what's called prebiotic evolution. An experimental replication of early Earth conditions, carried out by Stanley Miller and Harold Urey, produced some, but not all of the amino acid and protein precursors to life. Since 1953, when that experiment was carried out, our knowledge of early Earth conditions has improved, and a recreation of their experiment based on that new information did yield all of the chemical precursors to life. So all of the chemistry was there, all the necessary building blocks. Whether or not they could have self-organized into a molecule that makes copies of itself is still understandably the matter of some debate. There are a lot of religious scholars who look at this and say, aha, I found a unfalsifiable moment where a creator may have intervened, as though that solves everything, but it really doesn't. It doesn't solve any of the moral problems we talked about earlier. It just introduces a whole bunch of new ones. Like, why would you make use of evolution as a tool for shaping life that introduces so much unnecessary death and suffering? But I digress. However it got there, you start out with this simple, crude, and fragile self-copying molecule in a chaotic environment, which interferes with the copying process, such that subsequent generations of molecule are different from the parent. Most in bad ways, some in good ways. One of the good ways actually was nothing to do with the initial molecule, but a chance capture of one such molecule by a shell of lipids that had self-organized around a gas bubble, which then escaped. Lipids are what we know as fat molecules. They're hydrophilic, or water-seeking, on one end, and hydrophobic, or water-repellent, on the other. So around a bubble of gas in a liquid, they will naturally align into sort of mats on the surface. And if there's enough of them, they form a solid shell around the whole bubble. That's actually still what our cellular membranes look like. So now, one offshoot of the initial molecular progeny that happened to become trapped within a bilipid shell formed around a gas bubble now has a cozy little house in which to perform the careful and delicate business of self-replication, which enables it to do so with fewer copying errors. Reducing the rate of copying errors also unavoidably slows the rate at which evolution can occur, but there's a balance to be struck. Early chemical replicators probably wasted most of their energy producing a very high volume of unusable molecular garbage for every one functional offspring they made. Must have been the right answer, because all life as we know it is descended from the ones that lived in the cozy little gas bubble fat houses. The downside of replication occurring inside of a protective enclosure is the accumulation of waste. When copying errors did occur and they produced non-functional offspring, that just got trapped within the bubble, and there needed to be some way of clearing that out. And the solution was that at some point a smaller, independently evolved single-celled organism, very similar to the one we've been describing up until this point, became trapped within the larger one that we have been describing and sort of lived there as a housekeeper, eating up all of the refuse. And that's what we today call mitochondria. That's right, our boy mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, and you thought you'd never need to know that. They do a lot more than just cleaning up waste and recycling it to save energy, but I'm going to save that for another video. That's how you go from organic chemistry to single-celled organisms, and for a very long time, in fact most of the history of life, that's all there was. It took even longer than abiogenesis for life to make the jump from singled to multicellular. You and I and all other macroscopic life on Earth, except for xenophytophores, is simply comprised of a large number of these hardworking little guys in specialized labor roles, cooperating to produce a gestalt larger entity. Much in the same way that what we refer to as the United States is really a group of lots and lots of individual citizens. The United States is produced by their concerted toil in specialized labor roles, which I think non-coincidentally correspond to the functions of our major organs. The brain performing governance, the liver and kidneys performing sanitation, leukocytes and antibodies performing border control, and so on. From which perspective, a war is just two country-sized superorganisms trying to eat one another. It truly never ends at any scale. Life is unavoidably a struggle. Even we, who by our own ingenuity have cheesed and farmed and cheated our way out of the worst consequences of being a part of nature, will nevertheless one day be consumed, at least at the molecular level, by bacteria as we decompose. That's the good end. Don't feel too sorry for yourself. Remember, everything else that isn't human, or our pets, either dies in a slaughterhouse before we eat it, or dies screaming, being torn apart while still alive. And if it's lucky, then it's dead before whatever's eating it proceeds to eat its children, so it doesn't have to watch. That's incredibly bleak. I hope you will agree. And yet they keep trying to survive. I find inspiration in that. Nobody ever has to encourage or persuade a frog or a mouse or a bird or a snake or an insect to keep trying to survive. They just automatically do it. This is not due to any act of willful fortitude on their part, but because of the unique frailty of human beings, also our greatest strength, which is our large, complex brains, #humblebrag. As adaptations go, although they are calorically expensive, big brains have so far proven to be fairly OP. But they come with often unexamined debuffs, such as mortal anxiety, existential dread, things like that. Well, I've just about filled all the space on this video that I needed to, so I'll leave you with this. Is intelligence the way to go? It's gotten us this far, but it might be a dead end. Maybe we'll have to return to Monkey. Don't know if you can see it. There's a spider on spiderweb. Another little nature buddy I found. Tiny bros abound in nature if you know where to look. They're secret dudes. They're in that category. Secret dudes can be found anywhere at any time, if you open your heart to their presence. There's this little spider bro living its simple, wholesome life in nature, like a little fucking idiot that doesn't even have iPad. You there. Become tendies and feed yourself to me. One of them popped out a butt nugget. That's okay. We all do that sometimes, just right in the middle of the floor like that. Yeah, I think the black ones are the roosters. I'm not sure. Then again, I kind of want to think it's the ones with these floppy labia on their heads. Those might be the hens though, although that would be a little bit on the nose. Anyways, that's all for this time. Goodbye, Windows XP background.